Reverend Tim Keller came here to New York City with a daunting mission to bring the gospel to a town that's all too often written off as a modern-day Sodom and Gomorrah. He came to preach to the masters of the universe, Wall Street wizards, media moguls. But he started with a mere 75 members. That was 22 years ago. And then a watershed moment, September 11th. On the Sunday after the attacks, 5,000 people showed up at his Redeemer Church. And 10 years later, they're still lining up. There's no grand cathedral, not even a small chapel. Keller rents spaces around town every Sunday, spreading the good news in a city long thought too tough to tame. I spoke with him at one of his borrowed pulpits, the First Baptist Church of Manhattan's Upper West Side. First, thank you for joining us, Mr. Keller.
Glad to be here.
You know, it seems that at the beginning of the last century, so many of the great thinkers were saying religion is dying, it's dead. And yet here we are so many years later, and it's not just enduring, one might say it's even thriving. It's undergoing a renaissance. How do you account for that?
Many of the people who believed that thought that religion was really for immature people who didn't understand nature. And it's pretty clear that the reasons for religion are deeper than that, because as we've gotten more technologically advanced, that hasn't gotten rid of religion.
And how also do you account for the fact that there is so much more secularism, and yet there is also so much more religion in our lives, in our politics?
What's happening is secularism and devout religion is growing together, and what's going away is a kind of mushy middle where people are just part of the synagogue, the mosque, or the church because it's expected. So what's actually happening is polarization.
You've talked about an enormously sick pressure to do well and to make money. What toll does that take on people and on this country?
It takes a huge toll. I think most people agree that the economic downturn recession we just had came to some degree because of greed. I don't know of anybody in or outside the financial world that doesn't admit to that, and that's taken an enormous toll.
You also say that things like hard work or too much hard work is an idol that has to be shattered. Why is that?
Well, because the essence of sin, according to, I think, the Christian view, is it's not just doing bad things, it's also turning good things into ultimate things. And therefore, for example, if you love your children, that's one thing, but if you make your children's happiness the very meaning of your life, you'll put too much pressure on them. You might drive them into the ground. You might abuse them if they disobey you. So even good things that have become kind of God substitutes turn into bad things.
Like hard work, like success, money, workaholism.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make money, but when it becomes an end-all and be-all, then you start to trample on people and it eats you up and it can't fulfill your soul.
America is based on this idea of workaholism and the desire for success, and yet you're sort of questioning it.
Yes. The gospel, Christianity, is going to question every culture at its root. Eastern, non-Western cultures put this huge emphasis not on the individual but on the family. What matters is not your own individual success, it's the family. And we would say that's good, but it can turn the family into a kind of dictatorship. Whereas in the West, it's all about the individual, and we would say that's good, except individual freedom's great, we're all for it, but it does mean it's dog eat dog. People are consumed by their need for beauty.
So the dog eat dog idolatry that you obviously are preaching against, is that something that you saw a lot of in this sort of era of financial crisis that we live in this very difficult economic times that we live in?
Yes, and it certainly contributed to what we just went through. I've seen it, and I've actually told people if you put things in perspective, you probably won't make as much money, though you might. You will not probably rise as high on the ladder. You ought to be giving more time to family. You ought to be giving more time to relationships, to God, more time to the poor. But you're also going to be way happier in the long run, and many people are listening.
You talk about polarization between left and right. It does seem to be extreme at the moment in the United States.
Yes.
Politically, socially. Is there any hope that can change, do you think?
It will start if we stop demonizing each other. My elderly mother once said, that up until about 15 years ago, if you voted for a different person for president and the person you voted against became president, you still considered him your president. She said 15 years ago that changed. That if you voted against that guy and he became president, you actually act as if he's illegitimate. And I'm not sure, that is a big social cultural difference. And it really means the other side isn't really just wrong, they're kind of evil. And that's pretty bad.
I have to say that many would say the church plays into this highly acrimonious debate, public debate. Not all the church, but certainly some parts of the church. What should the church be doing different?
At the very least, we should be creating individuals who know how to talk civilly. The gospel should create people who say, I'm loved by God, but I'm a sinner. So there should be a certain humility and graciousness about the way in which you talk to everybody. As an institution, most of the churches have lost a lot of credibility. So I think my job is to create individuals who can participate in civil discourse.
You're saying institutionally the church has lost credibility?
The mainline church identified with liberal politics. The evangelicals have identified, at least they're identified in people's minds, with conservative politics. The Catholic Church has its sex scandals. And so institutionally, each church has lost credibility. So I think it's our job as individual congregations to care for the poor, to produce civil people who speak civilly, to just serve our neighborhoods and serve people and be careful about speaking ex cathedra, about these great political positions or issues.
So the church should be less political?
I think so, and I do. I personally think that the church, as the church, ought to be less concerned about speaking to politics and more concerned about service.
Thank you very much indeed.